Emma James over here with MediaWatch. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You've got reactions to this report hitting the French Parliament regarding, well, various allegations of intelligence shortcomings, which led up to the Paris attacks last year.
Yes, the reactions and actions of the intelligence gathering groups, the authorities, the forces of order, have all been scrutinised in this parliamentary inquiry. And now an assessment has been made. But you will get a very different impression as to what the conclusions are, depending on what you choose to read the story in. If we take a look at Les Echos, they basically have a very simple headline saying that France wasn't ready. They go on to say that there were no big errors. The country simply wasn't prepared for an attack of that nature. And if we look at Le Figaro, they tweeted earlier today that the attack on the Bataclan could not have been avoided. However, if we look at the Washington Post, their article says almost the exact opposite. Georges Fenech, who spearheaded this parliamentary inquiry, there were 30 lawmakers involved in the making of it. It took almost 6 months for them to come to these conclusions. He has blamed overly complicated intelligence gathering setups here in France, different agencies that aren't always communicating with one another, and he went as far as to say, according to the Washington Post, that Fenech said we could have avoided the attack at the Bataclan if there hadn't been these failures.
This is explosive stuff.
Yes, and it is strange just how differently it's being viewed depending on where you read the reports about it. If we take a look at Newsweek, another American publication, they focus on the fact that France needs an intelligence overhaul after the Paris attacks. There were 39 recommendations made. One of them is for the creation of a national counter-terrorism agency, similar to the one that was set up in the United States in the wake of the September 11th terror attacks, a sort of a central hub where everything is done under one umbrella, because at the moment there are 6 different organisations dealing with intelligence relating to terrorism, suspected terrorists. The Telegraph, a British newspaper, has been looking at this 300-page report in great detail as well. And the thing that they have really homed in on is this quotation that Schengen, the Schengen zone, which allows cross-border travel without the need for passports across many of the European countries, allows free movement of terrorists. Now, the idea is that it allows free movement of people, but this report says it allows the free movement of terrorists. They say that more border checks could have flagged up the movements of known or suspected terrorists. They point in particular to Salah Abdeslam, who fled Paris in the wake of the attacks, was actually stopped on the border with Belgium, was checked. They found he had a criminal record, but there was no mention from Belgium that he had been radicalised yet. Belgium knew it, but they hadn't told France.
So it really flags up a whole catalogue of misapprehension, of lack of communication, of groups just not working together. It's so shocking.
It's all too departmentalised.
And again, the reporting that you point out, it seems that the French, or certain parts of the French press, kind of almost putting their heads in the sand.
I think it's largely down to a difference between what was written in the official report and what Georges Fenech has said subsequently. I think that's where the differences are coming out. But it is certainly something that needs to be looked at in greater detail.
Okay, so Monday's terror attacks, moving on now, close to one of the holiest sites for Muslims in Saudi Arabia, has sparked, an outpouring of sympathy, but arguments too about the role of religion in the bombing.
Yes, of course, the messages of solidarity and support, especially from across the Muslim world, have been pouring in, as you would expect. But there are some more controversial voices to be heard too. Not necessarily here. The Middle East Eye says the Muslim world unites to condemn the Medina suicide attacks because, of course, the location of this particular attack has so much more significance in the Muslim world. It is one of the most revered sites, the site where Prophet Muhammad is himself buried. Now, they say that this has really struck at the heart of all things Muslim. If we look at some of the reactions, the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has said this: there are no more red lines left for terrorists to cross. Sunnis, Shiites will both remain victims unless we stand united as one. However, there are lots of people saying things like this: these pictures break the heart of every Muslim. We are Medina. And to explore that a little further, terrorism has no religion. A Muslim would not bomb one of Islam's holiest places. This act proves it beyond reasonable doubt, period. And there are lots of people echoing that same view. However, there are others who have a slightly different take on it. Geordie Van Lith says that an indifferent atheist would never harm this mosque. A Muslim who thinks all other Muslims are virtually atheists would, because he's basically saying that extremists have contorted Islam to the point that it no longer resembles the religion that they purport to follow, but of course they do still believe themselves to be Muslims. And the last word on this from Majid Nawaz, who himself was and admits to having been radicalised. He now works in counter-extremism, and he has stated in detail why he feels it is so important that we don't rule out the role of Islam in this, however perverted the attacker's perception of the religion may be. He says you run the risk of being forever unable to understand or counteract it, and he refers to the Voldemort effect, where in Harry Potter, in the books and the movies, they never mention the name of the evil wizard, but it doesn't stop him existing. And it is an interesting point that many people are rowing about online.
It's the build-up to the Euro 2016 semi-finals, well and truly underway, and so too are the inevitable mind games being played.
Yes, well, very, very quickly, because we are almost out of time, but one thing that I can bring to you on this, of course, the match isn't until Thursday, the big one between France and Germany, but Das Bild has already decided it knows the result. They have bid adieu to Les Bleus, pointing out that since 1972 they have always beaten the host nations. So clearly, German confidence running very high.
Nothing like a bit of mind play and confidence played out there. Always in the press, it seems. Emma, thank you very much indeed. Emma with MediaWatch.